So welcome to YOUnified, Unburdened Living. In this webcast series, we are focused on creating awareness and unity to the fragmented self, which is, in my opinion, the root cause of both your inner and outer challenges. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm excited to offer you a glimpse into the gentle yet effective approach and process that I use to help people access freedom, peace, and fulfillment. My name is Anik Malafon, and I will be your guide on your inner journey. As an international healer, educator, and speaker, my purpose is helping the silently suffering access their inner wisdom so they can overcome challenges and step into a more fulfilling experience. So here's what we have on the agenda today, folks. With me, I have Pam, who's a local health practitioner here in Moncton or Riverview, New Brunswick, and she is the owner of Physio in Motion. And the topic that she shared is such an instrumental, and I think we can all use some love and some healing around this. It was around fears around financial security, which I know many of us have been feeling that with these uncertain times. So thank you so much, Pam, for having the courage to share your fear and allowing everyone to benefit from gaining a new perspective and healing some of these fears, resolving some of these fears so that we can move forward using the best aspects of who we are and not moving into fear, which tends to trigger the worst in us. So I really want to give you a heartfelt thank you and acknowledgement for stepping out there and allowing us to address what most people are feeling, but maybe not everybody has the courage to admit. Now, Pam, you've got like training, like there's nobody's business. You've been exploring multiple modalities. You've been doing a lot of inner work, self-discovery, and inner healing. Just for fun, would you share with just like your top 3 best things or things that you find are most valuable? What are you gaining from healing that inner conflict within you? I know I kind of just put you on the spot, by the way, and tell you I was going to do that. Whoops. But then, it's candid and it's like right from the heart. So this is not a paid volunteer.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's this time right now, in some ways, I almost feel guilty because I feel like I've manifested where I'm at right now for the simple reason I've been wanting time to focus and time to sort of get out of where I tend to be, which is that busyness and in my headspace all the time. And so unconsciously, I feel like I'm actually getting what I've wanted in this last few weeks with all the craziness. And but with that certainly comes a lot of uncertainty, which I think everybody's feeling. Yeah, it's actually been a good time for me to put a little more emphasis and focus on exactly what I am wanting in terms of my personal and my professional life, and just giving me that time to be able to really look at where to go from here and trying to use it as an opportunity rather than a struggle. But it really it kind of hits you hard when you're sort of dealing with, okay, what's going to happen in the next few weeks to months, and are my goals going to be things that I'm still going to be able to achieve, and am I going to be okay? Is my family going to be okay? So I think everybody's feeling that. So there's a lot of uncertainty around that.
And I love that you're sharing that, because I think that is the inner story and the questions that everybody's asking them right now.
Absolutely.
Now, do you find that the tools that you've gained in personal development and in that inner work and that inner conflict resolution, are those tools being helpful to you? So like, let's say Pam before the training and Pam after the training, who do you think like is faring better in this situation?
Oh, definitely. Since I've done a lot of that work, it's definitely better. My sort of monkey mind, however, still kind of jumps into that busyness or that worry. I do struggle with some stress and anxiety, but I do have a lot better tools, certainly, with theta healing and just asking for guidance, and a lot of the training that I've done with you, but also things like NLP and timeline therapy to just sort of release some of those limiting beliefs and negative emotions surrounding a lot of the fear and a lot of the uncertainty has been very helpful. I, however, confess that sometimes it's hard for me to actually utilize the tools that I have,
Yeah.
because
Well,
you do
it's
get caught
really,
up on the
it
day.
is. I mean, when you're in the muck of
Mm-hmm.
it can be difficult. And that's why I'm, when we use the term social distancing, I kind of get a little twinge, because right now is when we need each other the most. So we need to focus
Exactly.
on physical distancing. And
Mm-hmm.
myself, I got caught up in that too. And I was like, oh, and I'm a homebody, and I'm a little bit of an introvert, believe it or not, naturally. So I was like, oh, for me, it's just a regular Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
But for some of my friends and loved ones who are extroverted and highly social people, they're
Mm-hmm.
going through some deep suffering
Yeah.
because of that. But then they're going the other way. They're really like not even talking to, at a distance. So I think it's important for us to really recognize the difference between the two things, and to recognize that love and connection is what we need more of right now, and just to find new creative ways of fulfilling that. And I hope in creating this platform for all of you that is fulfilling or satisfying that need in some way, shape, or form, for those who feel guided or who resonate with this type of approach. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and your honest feedback about what you've learned, what you're using, and also that when we are not grounded, or when we are overwhelmed by our own fears, it is nice to have that person that we can reach out to help us
Mm-hmm.
gain that ground again. And myself included, I've got what I call my ascension team of people that I reach out to, because we all have a blind spot, right? So when you're in your story, and one of my favorite quotes from Einstein is, the same mind, or the same thing thinking that created the problem can't be the same thinking that finds a solution. And I think that's why it's so beneficial for us to have conversations and to connect with others, to give us an outside perspective and different points of view, so that we can, create a change, to have inspired ideas, and to create innovation and solutions, which is what we need right now. So without further ado, now, with your permission, Pam, would it be okay for me to tap in? And I'm just going to go ahead and look at some. We're going to keep it, like on the top end, if you will.
Sure.
So I'm going to be using some very general statements. And what's kind of fun with this approach is that you know your story, right? And so I don't want you to feel obligated to share any details that you don't feel comfortable sharing in this group platform. And I know that you've worked with me in the past. So when I mention something, what I know, what you're talking about. And each and every person that's sharing this healing with us, when we look at those big topics, what your own personal story is. So all you need to do is observe that within yourself, and then allow the healing to support and release your individual stories, because the healing happens between you and your inner physician. I act as a messenger, I act as an intermediary, I act as a witness and observer to fulfill that healing on the quantum field level. So I want you to know that no matter who you are, when you're listening, that if one of the topics connects to your story, that's enough. You know your story, and that's all that's needed here to support that type of healing. Good. So let's go ahead and see what's going on inside. Would that be okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Especially Pam?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do a Pam scan, but I'm also going to do a group scan so everyone can get as much benefit from this as possible. Okay, so we're going to do discernment. So I'll get you all to take a nice, deep, comfortable breath, and let's take this opportunity to ground, allowing each breath to bring a wave of peace, more calming every breath. And move into the state of observation in your current state of being. What is your emotional state of being when it comes to your financial security? What's your personal state of being? And now when you go and observe your state of being and you ask that inner wisdom to show you the truth of what that current state is, what does that look and feel like to you? So I'd love for you to respond in the comments. What does that look like for you? Are you 100% safe and secure with 0% fear? Or do you have 5% fear or 5% stirring that's coming up inside? Or maybe you're 85% freaking out, right? Everyone's at a different range, and everyone's also at a different level of personal observation and self-awareness. So it's all very relative in regards to how you're feeling and what you're observing within yourself. Now, the first piece that I want to address is, so, full, complete disclaimer, honesty disclaimer here. How many of you are noticing that in the moment, your automatic response is jumping to the worst case scenario? And then you rationalize yourself back to reality. You're like, well, no, I got home, I got heat, I got food, I'm okay. Now, one of the things that I want to take a moment to explain is your subconscious mind, its natural behavior is to assess risk. So it's going to go ahead and calculate all the worst case scenarios until it finds the worst possible case scenario. And so you might be having this completely irrational fear on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level, your subconscious calculates probabilities. So no matter how unlikely, if there's a perception of a fear, your subconscious system, which includes your central nervous system, which includes your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn system, will respond according to that irrational fear, that calculated perceived fear. Not necessarily your conscious reality and what you're observing, but depending on your belief structure, your neurology, your past experiences, your past traumas, your personal fears, you're going to come up with a certain worst case scenario on the subconscious level. And then you might inadvertently be making choices on a conscious level that has an undercurrent of that subtle fear that's guiding you. So as much as possible, we want to be making heart-based choices, and we want to make rational and good judgment choices and not allow those subconscious fears to drive the choices. Because what happens is when we make choices based on fear, we have a higher probability of ending up where we don't want to be, because we're focusing on what we don't want subconsciously, right? So this happens all behind the curtains. So what is important, one of the downloads that I want to offer you that I feel is important is, would you like to know what it is, what it feels like, and how to recognize your current state of financial, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and energetic security? So let's advise and upgrade and educate the subconscious mind so that it can have a clear understanding of what's going on. So would that be okay with all of you? Yeah. And if you'd like that healing, just go ahead and say yes, and I'll act as your messenger, if you will.
Yes.
Now, another really important piece that's showing up is proper discernment. And I feel like writing a whole article around this, because I was faced with a loved one yesterday who was like, I'm not panicking, I'm just being cautious. And they were like a squirrel. And I was just like, and then they're like, but I don't know, I'm having like jaw pain and my throat hurts. And I was like, yeah, and you're also sweating, in case you haven't noticed. And they're like, but I'm not stressed. And I was like, okay, like, there are two ways to be cautious. And I want to take this platform because it's showing up, and I think it's important for us to talk about, is there are two ways for you to be safe. So you can be like a little squirrel waiting for something to like jump out at you. and be like on high alert, right? So there's that type of observation and staying aware of your external environment, which is highly hard, extremely hard on your stress system, and also really bad on your immune system. Then there's another way to remain aware and safe, which is from a peaceful position. So you're like, yeah, everything's looking good. So it's like a Zen caution, if you will. It's like you remain in a position of calm, and you observe your environment and only act accordingly when there's a threat, danger, and not already being in that threat response. You know, you're already on and you're just waiting for something to happen. And some of you might have that state right now triggered. And one thing that happens is once you trigger that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, and the fawn one, I don't know particularly that there's a lot of that going on right now, but it just starts, you stay in it. It's almost like having your brake on a little bit while you're trying to drive. So it's really hard on your system because then you have it on a little bit. And when you're supposed to be relaxed, you have this white noise that's kind of accumulating, and you just kind of ignore it and avoid it. And you're like, oh, no, I'm fine. And what happens is we become a little bit numb. Now, I want you to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize something. Is for most of you, for me, my brain, my neurology, my whole life has been built on our old social culture, our old social expectations, our old work habits. My whole life, including yours, has been based on a certain model. Your entire neurology is based on that. Overnight, it changed. So if you don't think your subconscious might be kind of freaking out in the back because all of its systems have been thrown up in the air, well, then you might want, and if not, well, then awesome. Can you call me? I'd love to chat with you about some of the tools you're using. But realistically, you know, I would say the bigger part of our population are moving into almost like a numb, kind of like Twilight Zone kind of feeling, like it's surreal feeling. And one of the things that is a really good indicator if that's what's going on with you is we become a little bit emotionally raw. So certain things will really trigger us, you know, where otherwise we would have been a little bit more calm or able to respond maybe a little bit less over responding to things. So that sounds like maybe what you've been experiencing, or if you want to just observe if that's going on now that you have that information. And it's not like I want you to go look for problems, is if we're not aware of a problem, well, then what happens is that it can catch up to us eventually. Right. And that's what happens with a lot of different disease. You know, we've been having a pain, we've been having different issues, and we're like, oh, it's not a big deal, not a big deal, not a big deal. And then you have an acute pain and they're like, oh shoot, I should have been paying attention to this when my body was talking to me a few months ago. Right. So one of the things that I'm inviting you to do is just to honor and recognize that by being proactive about what's going on. In those deeper layers of who you are, you can address them and you can reduce your, I don't want to use the word self-destruction because it's an overstatement, but to reduce any hardships or any hurt that you're causing yourself by pushing through the situations, which is what we tend to do as a society in general, right? So I know that was a little bit of a side tangent, but it felt like it was really important to share in this moment, in this platform, simply because a lot of us are doing it and not noticing or realizing it. So I wanted to share that with you. So speaking of that, let's give you the software. So how this healing works is on a conscious level. You know you're okay. You know, come on, like, you know your house is warm, you got food, you got lights, you know, you figure it out. But on a subconscious level, that's where these, let's call them irrational fears, might come up. And because the subconscious mind, if you will, is in charge of 95% of what's going on with you, that's in the unseen world of who you are, if you will, it's important to have that observation in the subconscious field, because then it gives you a much clearer picture of how you really are. right? It's kind of like driving on the highway and then you have a little noise coming from your car, and instead of dealing with it, you can just turn the volume on, and after a while you get in your car, your volume's always that high. Next thing you know, you're on the side of the highway broken down, and you're like, I don't know, it was just a little noise, I didn't think it was going to be a problem. Next thing you know, you're like, oh shit, maybe I should have paid attention to it before. So just some things that I want you to be mindful of moving forward. So with that being said, let's give you some discernment. So would it be okay for us to teach you the highest level of discernment between caution and planning, hysteria, fear, and anxiety? So would that be okay? So let's show you the difference. Would that be okay? Because a lot of people plan under hysteria, anxiety, or fear. Oh my God, I gotta do something. Like, and our society, I know I see this a lot, and maybe that's just the type of clientele that I work with, but we tend to default between procrastination and perfectionism. And
Yeah.
the reason that we do that is because we use that fear of not meeting the deadline or fear of failure to actually motivate us to get over our fear of it not being perfect, not being good enough, being judged, not being accepted, and so on and so on and so on. That's why procrastination and perfectionism, I think, is one of the main tools that we see in this our current social structure.
Yes.
So with that being said, let's go ahead and start by laying the groundwork for you on the subconscious level, because you probably know the difference on the conscious level. I'm sure you do, but how you feel, that's your indicator of what's really going on behind the scene. And that's what's important to recognize and be mindful of. So let's go ahead and show you that proper discernment. Let's show you what it feels like to recognize and know the difference. And let's show you how to apply that in a tangible way with absolute joy and ease. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Now, the subconscious is afraid of what it doesn't know. So here's the next piece of the healing that I want to offer all of you is on a subconscious level, you're all connected to the universal energy, and you are all connected into the unlimited potential of all of the outcomes, as well as the current probability of each outcome. And I know that might sound like a lot of words, but on a subconscious level, you know everything. You know everything because your subconscious mind is like this mega computer connected to all things and all times, all planes, all probabilities. So would it be okay for us to show you what it is, what it feels like, and show you the truth of who you are, what your life looks like, what your relationships look like, what your future looks like, what your security looks like in the future, after and during this experience? Would that be okay?
Yes.
This one thing that the subconscious mind really dislikes is uncertainty. And so sometimes if we can teach the subconscious what's to come and what's to be expected, it actually supports us in mitigating those fears that are being triggered. And then that way we can use that as a tool, and then we can make better choices for ourselves on a day-to-day. I mean, some people are responding out of fear, and some people are responding out of compassion. And so this is a really great opportunity to allow ourselves the best parts of ourselves to be brought to the surface, and not the worst parts. And the worst parts of ourselves are those fears in the subconscious mind. That's why they come out in these extreme situations, because we go into our default setting, into our survival mode, and that's ingrained in our subconscious programming. So let's go ahead and see what else you guys need. Oh, okay. I want to offer you some clarity around something. I'm going to give it to you consciously, and then I want to offer it to you on a subconscious level. So here's the kicker. So we love certainty, right? Don't we who here doesn't love certainty? Like, I know this is going to happen. Yay! There's a comfort that comes with that, eh? Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
Who here feels comfortable when something's like determined and certain?
Mm-hmm.
So certainty, and the opposite of that is uncertainty, right? And then when it's certain, well, then it's also defined or determined. And then the opposite of determined is undetermined. But here's the kicker. When it's certain and defined, well, then it's also limited, right? The opposite of that is unlimited. So if we can become more comfortable with a conscious experience of uncertainty, unknowingness, and being undetermined, well, then we open ourselves up to the unlimited potential and possibility. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. So I just want you to sit with that, and I want to plant that seed with you, and maybe becoming more comfortable and actually having a different positive perspective around uncertainty, because uncertainty can actually mean, hey, it's not certain, it's not determined, which means it could actually be better than what I can imagine. Now, wouldn't that be great? But we tend to focus on it can't be worse than I can imagine. So because that's how our survival mechanism responds, and that, I feel, is what we're evolving beyond individually. And one of the really great opportunities through this catalyst is allowing us to evolve into our humanity as a whole, because that is the best part of who we are, is our humanity. So that being said, let's go ahead and tap in. Okay, so I know, Pam, you're quite familiar with a whole bunch of modalities. Which muscle testing approach do you personally feel most comfortable with? Because I want you to muscle test something and see what's showing up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm afraid of being forgotten in this pandemic.
I'm afraid of being forgotten in this pandemic.
Okay. And how does that feel to you?
Well, felt okay, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for fun, what word do you like to use for like creator, source, God, universe?
Creator.
What's your creator? So
Yep.
just for fun, I have creator's perspective around this belief, and it matches my own.
I have creator's perspective around this belief, and it matches my own. No.
So that's okay. I'm here testing as your proxy as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tap in. So in your perspective, you're like, yeah, I know they're not going to forget me. But then like when you look at the higher perspective, it's like, your definition of what that means is not completely clean. Now, for those of you who have been following the series on my YouTube channel, I've got like a 25-minute training video for free. I know that goes for between 60 and 85 bucks sometimes. So I want you to go into my YouTube channel, use that resource. It's something that I've gifted to you. I think it's an important tool, because if you can know what your own inner truth is, and you can help discern what you think versus what you really think, your life is so much easier. So feel free to go on my YouTube channel. It's Mastering Ascension is the name of the channel. You can find a link to that on my website at masteringascension.com, and do that training. But it's such an instrumental tool. I know you use it probably quite a bit in your work as well, Pam. Do you find that it's a beneficial tool?
Oh, definitely.
To gain clarity, right? Because sometimes we think we know what we know, and sometimes we don't.
Exactly right. You just proved it beautifully. I'm like, oh yeah, I think I know that. And
then they're not going to forget about me. And consciously, you're not going to be forgotten about.
Yeah.
What we're really focusing on here is where those feelings are coming from, is from the subconscious cortex, if you will, from that subconscious system. What does the subconscious feel? That's what we want to talk about. And because your thoughts, your subconscious thoughts, is what generates your feelings. And so if your feelings aren't 100% aligned with what you consciously believe, that's your telltale sign that what you think consciously and what you believe subconsciously are out of alignment and are in conflict with each other. Which is why one of my goals, and what I've been really drawn to, is creating this unification process. Because no matter what I do, who I work with, whether I'm working with mental stuff, emotional stuff, physical stuff, there's always an inner conflict between what you consciously believe and know and what you subconsciously believe and know. And then you're in conflict with yourself, which then creates all of your problems. That's the world according to Annette. So now, with your permission, and I'm going to offer this to all of you, would you like to have the highest truth, perspective, definition, understanding, whatever your own personal belief structure is, because we're using your belief structure? Would you like to know the wisdom of what it is and what it feels like to have the highest perspective of being recognized, being in recognizing your importance, and being remembered and I felt like it was associations and governments and more groups than the individuals. But let's include individuals, because I am feeling there's a small part of our group that they're afraid that their loved ones will forget about them, or maybe their friends they haven't been able to reach out to will forget about them. So let's go ahead and show you the highest truth, perspective, definition, understanding. Let's show you what it feels like, and let's show you how to apply the knowingness of being recognized, being seen, being valued, and being important. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Now, just for fun, I haven't actually changed that specific belief, Pam. So go ahead and muscle test again. I'm afraid I'll be forgotten in this process, because now we've given you the higher perspective around what that looks like, right? So let's just see if your subconscious still has that fear even.
Okay. I'm afraid that I will be forgotten in this process. No.
Good. Well, and I tested you in the meantime. So something that's really fun is just by creating that big general download, we've cleaned up some of those little loose ends and individual beliefs. So I like to do a really like bottom down type of approach, because it's like we'll do the big topics first, and then we'll clean up any little cobwebs in the corner as we need to. And then we get more done faster. So now I'll get you to take a deep breath. And I'll get everyone to take a deep breath too, because now I want you to go ahead and tap in. And remember, when you're going in and having a conversation with yourself, we want to be like, come on, it's okay, don't be afraid. This is the opportunity for you to let your inner self know, tell me all of your fears, girl. Like, go in, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not, and sometimes we have fear around our fear. So if you can just for a moment, give yourself permission to be a complete third party observer. Pretend that you are a third person, if you will. And I want you to check in with that inner aspect of yourself. And I want you to see where you feel you are now when you think about your financial security and stability and the safety of you and your family and loved ones. Where are you now compared to before?
Definitely. Like, I would say before I was probably at about like an 85% like fear-based, and now it's definitely only around like I'd say the 30% range.
Good.
Yeah,
Let's
just
do the
still.
next layer. I feel like this next layer that we're gonna, and
Yeah.
again, you don't need to go into details, big topics.
Yeah.
So when you look at that 30%, now what are you afraid of, right? Because your subconscious goes, here's the worst case scenario, and then here's the worst case scenario, and then here's the worst case scenario. So we're gonna move through those layers and clean them up. So when you look at that residual 30, now what's being triggered in regards to your fear for your financial security? And I feel like it has to do with your family and household as a whole. I don't know if that makes sense for you.
Yeah.
It's almost like you feel more secure, but you're afraid for your household as a unit.
Yeah, that we're not, it's my husband and I, we don't have children, but yeah, I worry about my extended family, but also in our own household. My husband is also self-employed, and so he's
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Not so
have
much. Yeah.
we have it on both ends. It's not just me. And so there's, yes, and all the stress that comes with him also worrying about his business. And
So just for fun, and I think this is a really great exercise for all of you to help to hone in on what exactly is causing it. So of that 30%, this is what we're going to muscle test for fun. And you might get a number, Pam. I feel like you're a numbers person. So of that 30%, how much is that is what I heard was, I'm afraid for him. So how much of that 30% is your fear for his capacity to move through this?
I would say it's the whole 30.
I was getting 25, but
Yeah.
so now, like anything else, when you look at somebody, you're like, oh no, I don't know if you're going to make it. It's a real downer energy, right? And I know that is not at all your intention. Like, I know you're a light of inspiration, and that is not who you are as a person. But when you really care about somebody and you're afraid for them, sometimes it's really hard to not get into that energy and that fearful energy. So now is that fair for me to say that you're like afraid for him to be
Absolutely.
able to deal with the things that only he can control? Is that,
Absolutely.
because what are we afraid of? The shit we can't control. Okay, well, what does that mean? Everything that's outside of us. Like literally, the only thing you can control is your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, and actions. We can try to control our husbands, but girl, like good luck with that. So
Yeah.
what we're going to do is if we learn to surrender to that now, it just makes life a lot easier. So what we're going to do, with your permission, what I'm hearing, and for those of you who have fears around your loved ones and how they're going to make it through this experience, what I'm hearing is, would you like to know what it is and what it feels like to recognize their strength and be able to hold a position of belief in them instead of the fear for them that you currently have? So let's switch that 180 degrees. Would that be okay with everyone? So you can go ahead and say yes to receive this healing. And let's show you how to more effortlessly identify and discern all of the beautiful characteristics, skills, and strength that they have inside of them that they can access to support them in moving through either this current challenge or any other challenge in their life. Would that be okay? I'm hearing a lot of yeses in my third eye here, or my third ear, I guess is what, I don't know what they call it. And what I'm coming up as another feeling is almost like this fear of loss. Like, it's like, oh no, if they can't get through this, I'm going to lose them. Is that fair? It's a small portion for you, Pam, but maybe that's why I was seeing 25 and 5%. But I'm feeling for the group, it's actually it would be beneficial. So let's go ahead and show you, we're just going to show you the truth around your fear of potential loss. So we're going to show you the highest truth. So we're going to give you a higher eagle's eye view of this little fear, not little fear, it might be a big fear for you, that you have around losing your loved ones. So can we show you how to have the highest perspective and the truth around your individual fears that you have around loss? Would that be okay? And then I'm seeing like I want to add a positive piece to that, is what I'm being invited to do here. Is, would it be okay for us to show you how to easily and effortlessly discern, identify, recognize, and validate, as well as quantify all of the benefits that are being brought to the surface, both in your life, in your community, and in the world around this current state of upheaval? So that way you can recognize all of the things that we now have access to that maybe before would have been more challenging. So would it be okay for us to show you how to discern, how to recognize, how to access, how to quantify, how to validate the opportunities that this state is allowing and creating, as well as, unfortunately, the negative side? So let's give some more energy to the positive things that we can gain from this experience. Would that be okay? Good. So I'll get you to take a deep, 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 deep breath. And let's see, I'm going to scan you guys to see if there's any other little pieces. Good. Now, how's everybody feeling now? How do you feel, not how do you think, but how do you feel about your financial security? And Pam, you're muted, so okay. I'm going to go ahead and grab you here. Oh, I think we're both hitting the button at the same time.
Well, I think I hit the button once I heard my dog barking, so I was trying not to.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, I figured that's what I was like, is it okay if I mute? So just for fun, what I'm hearing is there's still some fear around potentially running out of money and running out of resources. So let's address that head on. So would it be okay for us to show you how to recognize all of the resources that you have, that you currently see, and all the access that you have that you might not yet be aware of, that will support you through this experience? So let's give you a broader perspective of just how many resources that you have access to that you might not have yet tapped into, or yet maybe have observed or recognized as a source of support. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah. That feels like a really big one for everyone. So let's do that one. I'm going to observe that change within your structures. Now there's some genetic and ancestral, as well as some historical beliefs. So there's some social beliefs, essentially, group consciousness beliefs, that are seeding, if you will, this is going to be a lot of suffering, right? So maybe you've had ancestors that have been forgotten, that have struggled, that have been hungry, right? And we think about it, it hasn't been that long since the Great Depression. And some of those fears are still instilled within our DNA, but also some of them have been passed down from our parents or grandparents, depending on what your age range is, right? So just for good measure, if you have any inherited beliefs or any social beliefs, or if you're connected to any group consciousness beliefs that are leading you to believe that this will be a time of suffering for you, and a fear of reoccurrence of past suffering, can we go ahead and clear you of that and release any and all attachments to recreating your past experiences or those of your ancestors' social experiences or community? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Good. Good. So now let's go back in and tap in. And just to see where we're at, right? So we've been at this for about, I think, half an hour. Money is a big one, right? It's like how our society currently, and I'd like to think that it's changing, how our society currently quantifies our security level, right? So when we're talking about money, if you want to get triggered, like, that's a really great topic. So when you tap in and you look at, or you feel, I don't want you to think about, how do you feel about your financial security and stability for you and your household, and whatever that household looks like for you. We all have different experiences here. So let me know in the comments how you're feeling, and give me some insights, like what was your number before, or what was your feeling before, and what's your number now compared to a half an hour ago. Oh, good. We've got some feedback. So 1% went from 50% fear to 20%. So just imagine 30% less fear in every moment, right? Like, you think about that, you're like, oh, I'm only a little bit stressed out. Well, you're stressed out every nanosecond of every day, like every minute of every hour of your whole day. That is like having your brake on just a little bit, right? So you can imagine what that does to your brakes when you're just a little bit stressed out. Well, that's what same thing's happening to that. So I know I'm annoying about it, I'm kind of naggy, but it's like, even a little bit of stress, we've normalized stress. We're like, well, I'm not more stressed than anybody else. No, it's not okay. Like, that's not, like, let's stop justifying stress. Stress is not a good thing, period. I don't care what your 1980s inspirational post, no pain, no gain, tells you, right? We need to move beyond that suffering model. So Pam, in your complete honest opinion, and if it's not zero, don't just whatever your amount is, because transparency and honesty here is, for me, it's very important. How do you feel you fared with the downloads and the healings we were able to do today?
Oh, it's definitely been a major shift. I think there's still that just maybe 5%, but
Yeah,
compared
I was
to,
picking up on that too. That's why I was like, don't feel like you have to say zero.
yeah, there's that little grain of sand hiding in there somewhere, but no, it's amazing how much of a shift just in that short period of time, just with that. it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
a lot better, considerably
Oh,
better.
good. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so glad to hear that. I want to thank you so much for your courage. Nobody likes to talk about money. It's not something that we business people especially don't like to talk about financial
Mhm.
challenges, because then
Yeah,
we don't want people to think we're not successful, because then they won't give us business, and that's just,
exactly.
poo poo. So I want to really acknowledge and thank you for having the courage to help remove the fear around healing and being honest about how we feel, so that other people can be inspired to step into their own truth as well. Now, from CEOs to social worker, from Kuwait to Calgary, inner conflict continues to show itself at the root cause of our suffering. So my goal and my purpose is to help and support you with this inner healing. I want you to know it doesn't take a lot of heavy lifting. All it needs is that for you to be ready, for you to be willing, and for you to have some courage. So if you find this series helpful and supportive, I invite you, please share it with your friends. They might need some love as well, and some connection and some support. They might be having fears that they're not sharing with you or being honest about themselves as well. And this might be a really great way for them to feel better and for us to connect as a community. So feel free to share this with your friends. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would love if you gave me a like and a comment, and be sure to tune in to our next episode in the Unified Unburdened Living webcast series. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.